I'm very lucky to have each one of them a fine musician in their own right. But together, we are Fred Wesley and the new JB. Phase 4.
can turn the world on with her smile? Who can take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile? Well, it's you, girl, and you should know it. With each glance and every little movement you show it. Love is all around, no need to waste it. You can never tell, why don't you take it? You're gonna make it after all. You're gonna make it after all.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Real Comia Flynn. Today, we have none other than the wonderful and amazing person, Fred Wesley. So, Fred Wesley is a legendary band leader, trombonist, author. Fred Wesley is one of the forefathers of funk, still setting standards with his jazz funk band, the New JBs. Together for more than 25 years, the band is a living celebration of roots, funk, and more, performing such hits as Pass the Peas, made the James Brown and the JBs, including Maceo Parker, as well as selections from the P-Funk years, and Fred's own and other soulful jazz and blues compositions. So everybody put your hands together out there for the one and only Fred Wesley. Hey, Mr. Wesley, how's it going?
Oh, thank you very much. It's going just fine right now. Yes.
Good. You said fine right now. So listen, how's that weather? I know we talked a little bit about the weather. How is it there?
It's a little rainy. It's a little thunderstorm outside, but it's warm and toasty in here. We having fun.
I love it. I love it so much. Listen, Fred, one question for you. Now, we know that you are the funk master. We already said that. So how did you end up playing the trombone?
My father was a band leader. Also, he's a music teacher, and he had a band that when I was 12 years old, he came to me and told me, said he needed a trombone in the band. Now, I had been studying piano with my grandmother, and I played a little percussion. And when he said trombone, I was taking trumpet, and I said, okay, trombone is all right. So he brought me a trombone, and I played in his band, and I've been on trombone ever since.
Wow. So you said ever since. Now, how long has ever since been?
It's been about 60, 70 years, almost 70 years.
Wow. Now, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, I know that you had a stint with James Brown. How was it working for the Godfather of Soul?
Well, for me, it was like an education because, James Brown had a way of doing things his way, right or wrong. It was the way he wanted it, and I had to go along with that in order to stay with him as long as I did. But I learned a lot from him. James Brown gave me the opportunity to write music and to record music. I learned a lot from James Brown. But I know you've heard stories about James Brown being a rough man to work for, but he was very, very compassionate with me, and
Mhm.
uh, I made a lot of money with him, and I still make a lot of money from him. But James Brown was an educator. He was really cared about his people, and he showed it in the way he did his music and the way that he ran his band. So all the things you heard about James Brown, just forget it and just say he did Fred Wesley right.
I love it. You said out of everybody else, he made sure he did you right.
And he
Because
did
sometimes
everybody right, but everybody don't take it like that. But James Brown did everybody exactly the way they would needed to be treated.
I got you. Now, when I watch him, sometimes I go back and watch old clips of James Brown and the band and you guys
Yeah.
playing. He looked like he was a perfectionist when it came to that music and those countdowns. Was it?
That's really the truth. He was a perfectionist. I know you're very young, and you didn't have an opportunity to see him on stage. But James Brown was the greatest performer that I have ever worked for, and I have ever seen. He
Mhm.
was a great great entertainer. And
Hmm.
that's how he would be remembered, and uh, uh, that's how the film shows him as a great entertainer. I know you haven't seen him in person, but it was a delight to see him in person, to see him on stage.
And it's interesting that you said that, Mr. Wesley. My father had the opportunity to meet James Brown several times when he came to Savannah. So he shared stories with me about Mr. Brown, and my dad is a saxophone player as well. So I
Okay.
never forget, he told me, I think James Brown was playing in Savannah. This was like long, long time ago.
Hmm.
And he said he had the opportunity to almost sit in with James Brown. And I think whoever the person was that was not going to be there ended up showing up. So that kind of booted him back on the sidelines where
Oh
he
yeah.
didn't get the opportunity to play. But he just shared what it was like to meet him as a musician to a musician. Like it just blew his mind. Like he said, he was just that awesome of a musician.
And he was a challenge to work for too.
I bet he probably made you want to be better as a musician. Did you feel that way?
I definitely feel that way. And I learned a lot from him. He allowed me to record his music and to write his music with him. And he was a challenge to work for, but if you're up for the challenge, then you can learn from James Brown.
Right. I believe it. So now from James Brown, you shifted all the way to the funk. You went to Funkadelic. So tell us a little bit about what that was like making that pivot, that shift.
Well, it was like an extension of what James Brown was doing. George Clinton and Bootsy Collins and all the guys in the P Funk band, they had learned a lot from James Brown also, and it was just it seemed like James Brown on steroids, a psychedelic James Brown, because they took it to another level, and but they based it on what James Brown was doing and what he had done. So P Funk was just an elevation of what James Brown had did.
I got you. So now is that part of the reason why you left James Brown to go to Funkadelic, or what was your reason for leaving James?
Well, I don't want to go into why I left James, but
Gotcha.
uh, uh, really, it was the reason I left. One of the reasons I left James Brown, because it was an opportunity to do more, and James Brown was just doing the same thing over and over again. So far as I'm concerned, and
Mhm.
uh, Boosie and George and all the Funkadelic people wanted to do some more. So I went with them because they allowed me to do more than I was doing.
I got you. And I completely understand that. So it almost allows you to grow a little bit more with your craft.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got you. I
Hmm.
got you. So now I'm going to call out a few names, and I just want you to tell me what it was like working with these few people I'm about to call out.
Okay.
So, how was it like working for Count Basie?
Beg your pardon?
How was it like working for Count Basie? What was it like?
Oh, that was the greatest gig that I ever had. Count Basie had a groove, and he had a way of leading a band. That I based the way I lead a band on the way Count Basie led his band. And
Mhm.
just his music, his smooth music, and that easy groove that he had. And the guys in the band were just regular people, and they all were just great guys. And I learned a lot from being with Count Basie and from being around the people in Count Basie's band. It was the greatest gig that I ever had, but it didn't
Wow,
pay a lot of money because it was a lot of people, and so I had to leave. But that's the only reason I left, because it didn't pay the money that I was used to making with P Funk.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure there were like endless hours of rehearsal. Like, what would a rehearsal day look like for you working with him? What did that look like?
Well, but it wasn't a lot of rehearsal with Count Basie. You learn from the guys around you. Everybody had been in the band a extended length of time, and so you just sat in and you learned from the guys sitting next to you, the guys behind you, and you just learned the music from the people that were playing it before you. It wasn't
Now,
a lot.
that wasn't a lot.
It was not a lot of rehearsal.
Gotcha. You guys probably fed off each other with the groove of the music and just kind of kept rolling from there, though, didn't you?
I had to get. Can you imagine going from P Funk to Count Basie? That was really a shock to my system. You know,
I-
of course, I learned how to play big band music in the army, but playing big band music after playing P Funk music was
right.
really a shock. I had to learn how to calm myself down.
All right, Mr. Wesley, one more person we need to talk about.
Yes.
Lionel Hampton. What was it like working for Lionel? Or working
Well,
with, I should say.
I actually never worked directly with Lionel Hampton. I worked with the Lionel Hampton Tribute Band.
Oh,
It was headed by a great singer named Jason Franklin, and
ah,
he hired me to play with the Lionel Hampton band. His music, I've always admired his music, but I
mhm.
never worked directly for him, except once. I worked for
Okay.
him one time at Disneyland, but
Oh,
that was only 1 week, and I didn't really get to know him well. But the music was fantastic. I loved him because he had a groove. He was the most talented musician.
mhm.
As you know, he played the vibes and the drums, and he danced and he sang. So he
Right.
was a fantastic musician. But that was the only time I worked for him, just that one time.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Now, for our younger viewers that are watching, we have some young people that are amazing musicians.
Yes.
What would they need to do to work with a celebrity, a superstar like you did with James Brown? Like, what was your walk on working with him? How did that even come about?
Well, not to be arrogant. You work with somebody like James Brown. It's a tendency to be arrogant. I was arrogant at first. In fact, I played with him for 2 years. Then he fired me, and I came back and played with him for another 4 years. But you have to listen at what a old person tells you. Because you got to face the fact that an old person has been where you want to go, and what they say might not agree. You might not agree with it at first, but in the end, you have to listen to older people, more experienced people than yourself. And
Mhm.
because with James Brown, I was arrogant. I tried to tell him how to run his band, and he didn't like that, and they fired me. But when I came back with an attitude that I was going to listen to him and I was going to do what he said, and regardless how ridiculous it sounded, and
Right.
it end up sounding being the correct thing to do.
Uh-huh.
But I was arrogant at first. But you can't be arrogant. You could be arrogant to a certain extent, but you cannot be arrogant totally because older people have been where you want to go.
Right.
So you have to listen to them.
Right. So is it something like you have to find yourself like, a lot of people would go on sets. Like I remember my father, we used to talk about that. And I had a band for a short stint myself as a vocalist.
Yeah,
But do you find yourself going to like sit in on gigs to kind of get in with different musicians to play with them if it's something that you really, really want to do?
that's what you have to do.
Hmm.
That's how I got hired with James Brown.
Mm.
Uh, the same person hired me with James Brown, Wayman Reed, a guy from Nashville, a trumpet player. I met him at a jam session in Mobile. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I
Okay.
met him on a jam session, and he liked the way I played. I didn't see him for years. Then he called me up and asked me if I wanted to work with James Brown, which I didn't. I was playing jazz.
Right.
But he was a jazz player, and I said, "Well, if Wayman is with James Brown. He played jazz. He got jazz people in the band. And plus, people from Mobile were in the band. Jabbo was from Mobile. Bernard Odom, he was a bass player. He was from Mobile. So
Hmm.
I said, yeah, I play with James Brown, but I was still arrogant. I thought his music was kind of low key, under my radar, because I could play jazz, and I
Gotcha.
didn't want to play that hoop de doop music that James Brown was playing.
I like that. The whoop music.
But
I
it,
got
but it,
you.
it ended up being a revelation to me. It was all music is good if it's done from your heart. And so that's the one thing I learned, that you cannot be arrogant with an old person,
Right.
because, because like some people are arrogant with me. I'm an
Uh-huh.
old person, but don't be arrogant with me. Do like I say. But you have to recognize that music moves on, but
Yeah.
a lot of things in music remains the same.
Mhm.
So you have to listen to what people tell you.
Right. But I'll say this, Mr. Wesley. I think most musicians anyway have a teaspoon of arrogance anyway. Because if
You,
they're bad musicians, they're bad musicians. So
you
that's
got
I
you
think
got
that's
to
what it
be
was.
arrogant. You
I don't
got to
think it's
be
that you were
arrogant.
arrogant. I just think you were just great at what you did and you knew that. And I think it takes a little bit of that anyway to be in that industry. Like you can't be too laid back now. You playing with James Brown, you've done Funkadelic. I mean, you've
Yeah,
been with some heavy hitters. So that
yeah.
requires you to have just a little bit of that arrogance, just a little bit.
You got to be a little arrogant. Sometimes you got to be a lot of arrogant, but you got to know when to listen to.
Ah, I got you. I got you. I got
Yeah.
you. And this is the funny thing. I heard that James Brown wanted to run for president and was going to make you vice president. Now you got to tell my viewers a little bit about that.
James
You
Brown
got
would
to
say
tell my
some,
viewers
some
about that.
he would say some ridiculous things too. Now that's not one of the things that came true. Some things he said about music came true, but that
Right.
particular thing did not come true. But me being a yes man like I was, I said,
Mhm.
yes sir, Mr. Brown.
Right.
He said, I'll run for president and Fred gonna run for vice president. I said, yes sir, Mr. Brown.
So whatever he said, you're like, okay, we can do this.
We can do it because I've seen him do some things that were impossible that
Right.
came true. So,
Right. So
but I was a really a severe yes man when I was with James Brown.
gotcha.
But it worked out. I was with James Brown as long as I could take that ridiculousness that he said, and long as what he says came true, then I was there. But it ran out. It ran out. So you got to be yourself sometime.
Right. Listen, I completely understand. It's so funny you say it ran out.
Yeah.
So so out of all of your genres of music, which one is your absolute favorite to play for? You got jazz, you got funk. Which one do you like the most?
I don't know. I love bebop.
Oh, okay.
Bebop is, to me, it's the epitome of music. If you can do bebop, I just think that's the best music that you can do. But funk is good too. But I gotta say that jazz and bebop is my favorite. That particular type of jazz, which bebop is my
Mhm.
favorite.
I love it. I tell you, and for the longest, when I was growing up, Mr. Wesley, that's all my dad would let me listen to was jazz music
Yeah,
as a child. And at the time, I didn't know any better. I used to call it elevator music when I was a little girl. I said,
yeah,
"Dad, I have to keep listening to this elevator music." But after a while, it grew on me.
yeah.
And I loved it because that was part of our nightly ritual was to listen to jazz music. And like
Yeah.
I said, my dad played saxophone, I played the flute.
I
For
probably knew
some-
your dad. I probably knew your dad.
you might, his name was Comer Flynn, and he was from Savannah,
Hmm.
retired educator, but he was a musician at heart. And he had his
Okay.
own band, local band here.
Yeah.
But that's just something we did all the time. And he tried to teach me how to scat. I still can't scat. I can sing,
Yeah.
but scatting, I could never quite get the hang of it for whatever reason. It would sound like scooby boop boop boop, but it would never sound like all of the other greats. But I did try.
Right. Right. Well, keep trying, and you'll get it one day.
Let's hope so. Let's hope
Yeah.
so. Well, Mr. Wesley, we just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I know you said the weather's a little rough there, but you stay safe. And we just want to thank you so much. I know the viewers enjoyed you, and we're going to definitely stay in touch. And
Well,
then,
Miss Lynn, I really enjoyed this, and you had some great questions, and I hope I gave you some great answers too. Thank you very much.
listen, you
Yeah.
did. So, everybody, thank you so much again to the amazing Mr. Fred Wesley. And thank you so much to all of the Real Comia Flynn viewers. We thank you so much. We'll see you soon.